The air grew thick as Mara approached the glowing hollow nestled beneath the colossal ancient tree. It pulsed faintly with an eerie bioluminescence, casting undulating shadows that danced like restless spirits on the gnarled bark. The whispers she had heard since entering the forest crescendoed here, swirling around her like a mist, indistinct but insistently present. Stepping into the hollow, Mara felt the weight of countless eyes upon her, though no face was truly visible. Instead, flickering glimpses of fragmented memories shimmered in the air, a child's laughter fading into silence, a whispered promise dissolving like smoke, the sharp sting of loss echoing endlessly. Faces, some human, some warped beyond recognition, glimmered briefly before melting into the foliage, their edges blurred and shifting. Her breath caught, a chill crawling up her spine as the forest's consciousness revealed itself, not as a single entity, but a sprawling mosaic of absorbed souls, each one a thread woven into an impossible tapestry of memory. Time here was fluid. Moments from centuries past merged with the present in a disorienting dance. Mara's own memories, once steady and tangible, felt fragile and malleable under the forest's gaze. A sudden movement drew her eyes a pale figure emerging from the shadows. Lena, the ethereal presence who had haunted her steps, materialized beside her. Her hair flowed like a river of moonlight, and her eyes mirrored the depths of the forest itself, ancient, unreadable, and infinitely sad. "Do you see now, Mara?" Lena's voice was soft yet resonant, carrying the weight of countless unspoken truths. The forest does not devour flesh, but memory. It preserves, reshapes, and consumes. Every soul that enters becomes part of its endless song. Mara struggled to find words, overwhelmed by the flood of images and emotions crashing through her mind. Faces of hikers past flickered before her eyes, some desperate, some resigned, others lost entirely to the forest's will. Their stories intertwined with hers, threads fraying and knotting in a chaotic pattern that defied understanding. "How do I hold on?" Mara whispered, clutching the worn pages of her journal like a lifeline. Lena's gaze softened, though her expression remained enigmatic. Memory is a river, ever-changing and elusive. To hold on is to fight a current stronger than yourself, but your struggle, it matters. The hollow seemed to pulse, the whispers growing louder, more insistent. Mara felt her own memories begin to blur, edges fraying as if pulled by unseen hands. The faces in the mist reached out, beckoning, merging, threatening to dissolve her into the vast consciousness. Panic surged, a desperate need to grasp something solid, something real. She closed her eyes, clutching the journal tighter, reciting fragments of her past aloud, names, places, moments that had defined her. When she opened them again, the swirling mist had quieted slightly, the faces retreating into shadows. But the fear remained, a gnawing certainty that the forest's hunger was endless and patient. "You see now," Lena said, her voice fading as she slipped back into the shadows. "The forest remembers all, but never the same." Mara stood alone in the glowing hollow, the weight of the forest's memory pressing down upon her. Somewhere deep within, a seed of resolve took root. If she was to survive, to reclaim her shattered self, she would need to confront this ancient alien consciousness on its own terms. As the whispers softened to a haunting lullaby, Mara turned away from the hollow, stepping back into the shifting shadows of the forest. The journey ahead was uncertain, the path fraught with peril. But she carried with her a fragile hope that even within the forest's endless memory, fragments of her true self could endure. The forest breathed around her, alive and watching, its ancient mind pulsing with silent hunger. And somewhere, deep in the tangled roots and shifting leaves, the memory of Mara Ellison began to ripple, changed, fragmented, but not yet lost. With a steadying breath, Mara moved forward, the forest's endless song echoing in her ears, reminder that she was both prey and witness to a horror beyond understanding, where memory was the ultimate currency and identity the most fragile of treasures. The night stretched ahead, alive with unseen eyes and whispered secrets, as the forest waited patiently for the next soul to step beneath its canopy. The air around Mara thickened, heavy as if the very atmosphere resisted her presence. She stood rooted in the heart of the clearing, where the ancient trees arched overhead like cathedral spires, their gnarled branches pulsing faintly with a ghostly, bioluminescent glow. Shadows writhed and twisted between the trunks, dark tendrils of smoke that whispered in voices both familiar and alien. They spoke in fragment snatches of laughter, cries of pain, half-remembered promises, echoes of the countless souls the forest had consumed over centuries. Mara's breath hitched. She clasped her hands tighter around her worn journal, the edges frayed from constant use, the pages filled with desperate notes and scribbled recollections. The wind caught the book, fluttering its pages wildly, as if the forest itself sought to erase her attempts to anchor herself. Her eyes darted around, catching glimpses of phantasmal figures formed from leaves and branches, their faces shifting between recognition and grotesque distortion. They beckoned silently, shadows of past selves lost to the forest's insatiable hunger. A sudden movement to her side made Mara spin. Lena emerged from the gloom, her pale form shimmering like a mirage. Her long, flowing hair floated as though underwater, and her eyes mirrored the shifting greens and browns of the forest itself. She spoke softly, her voice a melodic riddle. "You are many, yet none, Mara. The forest knows you, every version of you, but never the one you seek." Mara's heart hammered fiercely. "Who are you? Are you real?" Lena's smile was enigmatic, neither warm nor cold. "I am the memory you cannot hold, the shadow you cannot escape. I am both and neither, a fragment of the whole." The words wrapped around Mara's mind like creeping vines, tightening their grip. She staggered back, clutching her head as the whispers crescendoed into a maddening chorus. Her reflection surfaced in a nearby pool, but it was broken, fractured into countless shards of glass, each showing a different Mara. One smiled faintly, another wept silently, yet another stared blankly, lost and hollow. "This isn't me," Mara whispered, tears stinging her eyes. "I'm still here, I'm still me." But the forest responded with a rustle of leaves, a low, guttural murmur that seemed to seep into her bones. The bioluminescent glow dimmed, shadows swallowing the light as if preparing to claim her fully. Her identity flickered, a candle flame caught in a tempest. In the darkest moment, Mara drew a shaky breath. She pressed her palms to the earth, feeling its heartbeat beneath her fingertips, slow, steady rhythm that connected her to something enduring, something beyond the forest's consuming grasp. The whispers softened, the spectral figures receding as if reluctant to surrender their prey. She opened her journal, tracing the words she had written, fragments of memory, anchors to a self slipping away. "I am Mara Ellison," she murmured fiercely. "I remember, I resist." The forest exhaled, a sigh that stirred the leaves but did not break her hold. For a fleeting moment, clarity pierced the haze. She stood not as a fragmented echo, but as a whole, fragile, battered, but unbroken. Yet, the struggle was far from over. The forest waited, patient and eternal, its hunger undiminished. And Mara knew that each breath she took in this living nightmare brought her closer to either salvation or complete dissolution. Her journey was at its breaking point, and the shadows around her whispered promises of oblivion that she could neither ignore nor fully understand. But for now, she clung to the last, flickering flame of herself, daring to hope that she might yet reclaim the self the forest sought to erase. And as the twilight deepened, the forest watched, waiting for the next move in its endless game of memory and identity. The forest's pulse was relentless, and Mara's fight had only just begun. Her fractured self held fast, but the tides of memory and shadow churned close. The breaking point was behind her, but the path ahead was shrouded in deeper darkness, where every step might be the last she took as herself. The echo of her own name whispered on the wind, a lullaby and a warning. And somewhere, deep within the shifting canopy, the forest waited, always waiting for the next soul to step beneath its watchful boughs. The twilight deepened as Mara stepped cautiously into the heart of the forest, the air growing heavier with each breath. The ground beneath her feet was soft and yielding, carpeted with moss that glowed faintly in the dim bioluminescence spilling from the towering trees around her. At the center of this living cathedral loomed the colossal ancient tree, its bark twisted and gnarled as though it had weathered the turning of centuries itself. It pulsed with an eerie faint light, casting long shadows that danced like restless spirits in the stillness. Mara's heart pounded in her chest, each beat echoing the urgency of a life teetering on the edge of oblivion. She had come here driven by a compulsion she barely understood, a haunting call from the forest that had both nurtured and eroded her sense of self across countless visits. Now, standing before the source of the forest's sentience, she felt the full weight of the entity's presence pressing down on her soul. A soft rustle stirred the air, and from the shifting shadows emerged Lena, her pale form seeming to glow with an ethereal light. Her flowing hair swayed like mist, and her eyes shimmered with an ancient knowledge that spoke of countless memories lost and consumed. "You stand at the edge, Mara," Lena whispered, her voice like the sigh of leaves in the wind. "The forest remembers you, but not as you were. You are a shadow, a fragment." Mara's gaze flickered between the spectral figure and the immense tree. "I am more than a shadow," she said, voice trembling yet resolute. "I am still me." Lena smiled faintly, a gesture both haunting and sad. "The forest does not hunger for flesh. It feeds on memory, on identity. It weaves you into its endless tapestry, but you must choose surrender or fight." A swirl of images engulfed Mara then, memories splintering and colliding like shards of broken glass. Faces she once knew, moments she cherished, and fragments of herself she struggled to grasp all spun around her in a chaotic cyclone. The forest's whispered voices wove through the tempest, indifferent and cold. "Remember," Mara whispered to herself, clutching her journal tightly. "Remember who you are." The ancient tree's bark seemed to pulse in response, glowing brighter as the shadows coalesced into fleeting shapes, faces, and forms of other lost souls trapped within the forest's endless memory. The air vibrated with 1,000 silent screams, a chorus of forgotten selves eternally entwined with the forest's will. Mara stepped forward, raising her voice against the oppressive silence. "I will not be lost to you. I will hold on to who I am." The forest answered with a surge of whispered voices, a harsh, unyielding chorus that sought to drown her resolve. But Mara's determination blazed brighter than ever, a fragile flame flickering against the consuming darkness. "You may reshape me," she said, voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her mind, "but I will fight to keep the pieces whole. I am not just a memory to be devoured." For a moment, the forest was still, the bioluminescent glow dimming as if considering her words. Then, from the depths of the ancient tree, a low rumble, echoed a sound that was both a breath and a growl, ancient and vast. The forest offered no promises, only an indifferent silence that stretched like a void. Lena reached out, her hand brushing Mara's cheek with a touch as cold as dew. "The choice is yours," she said softly. "To become part of the endless memory, or to resist and risk vanishing entirely." Mara swallowed the lump in her throat, feeling the fragile thread of her identity stretched taut. The forest's hunger was an alien force, vast and unknowable. But within her burned a human spark, the desire for continuity, for selfhood, for the fragments that made her whole. Clenching her fists, Mara stepped back from the ancient tree, eyes blazing with fierce resolve. "I fight," she declared, "no matter the cost." The forest's shadows shifted once more, swirling around her like a storm of lost echoes. The confrontation was far from over, but Mara had taken her stand. The ancient consciousness waited patiently, its hunger unyielding, as the fragile battle between memory and oblivion waged on beneath the whispering canopy. The path ahead was uncertain, the outcome hanging in the balance between light and shadow. Yet Mara's defiance carved a sliver of hope amid the profound dread, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Even in the face of a memory that remembers you, but never the same version twice. And deep within the forest, the ancient tree pulsed quietly, waiting for the next soul, braver, desperate enough to face its endless embrace. Mara stood at the heart of the forest, the colossal ancient tree looming before her like a cathedral of gnarled wood and pulsating light. Its bark shimmered with an eerie bioluminescence, faint but insistent, casting long shadows that flickered and twisted in the stillness. The air was thick with whispered voices, soft and distant yet unmistakably present echoes of countless souls who had stepped beneath these branches, only to vanish into the endless archive of the memory grove. Her breath came in shallow bursts, the cold dampness of the forest floor seeping through her worn boots. She could feel the pulse of the tree beneath her feet, a slow rhythmic beat that seemed to resonate with the very core of her being. Around her, the forest held its breath, waiting. Lena materialized beside her, her form shimmering like a mirage caught between mist and light. Pale and ethereal, Lena's eyes reflected the forest itself, deep, pools swirling with greens and browns, flecked with flickers of bioluminescence. Her voice was a whisper, yet it cut through the silence like a blade. "The forest remembers," Lena said, her words folding into the rustling leaves. "But it never remembers you as you are. It reshapes, consumes, transforms. Every return is a price paid in fragments of yourself." Mara's heart clenched. She had felt it all along, the pull, the compulsion, the slipping of her memories like sand through fingers. But to hear it spoken, to face the truth laid bare, was a different weight entirely. "Why?" Mara asked, voice trembling. "Why does it need us like this?" Lena's gaze was inscrutable. "Not need," she replied. "Hunger. The forest is old beyond measure, a consciousness born from the roots and soil, feeding on memory to sustain itself. Flesh fades, but memory lingers. It is the currency here." Mara swallowed hard, memories swirling in her mind, flickering images of faces she once knew, moments she had cherished, all now broken shards reflecting back at her like shattered glass. She tried to grasp them, but they dissolved before her eyes, leaving only the hollow echo of loss. The forest's whispers grew louder, voices overlapping in a haunting chorus. They spoke not in words, but in feelings, longing, despair, confusion, emotions that Mara felt tightening their grip around her heart. She glanced down at her hands, trembling. The journal she clutched was worn, pages filled with frantic scrawlings and desperate attempts to anchor herself. But even these words felt fragile, ephemeral against the vastness of the forest's memory. "You must choose," Lena said softly. "Surrender and become part of the endless memory, a fragment preserved within the grove's consciousness, or resist, fight against the tide, and be lost forever, raised without trace." Mara's mind raced, the weight of the choice pressing down on her like the thick canopy above. To surrender meant losing herself, becoming another ghost among countless others. To fight meant obliteration, the complete dissolution of everything she was. Her memories fractured violently. Faces of past selves flickered before her eyes, versions of Mara, shaped and reshaped by the forest's touch. Each one reached out to her, silent and pleading, vanishing like smoke the moment she tried to hold on. Tears blurred her vision as she realized the truth: the forest was neither cruel nor kind. It was indifferent, an alien mind sustained through the slow erosion of identity. It did not hate or love. It simply existed, feeding on memory as a star feeds on light. A shiver ran down her spine as the forest's bioluminescent glow intensified, shadows stretching and twining around her like living things. The ground beneath her feet seemed to pulse, breathing with the life of ancient roots entwined beneath the soil. Mara's voice was barely a whisper. I don't want to be lost." Lena reached out, her touch cool and insubstantial like morning mist. "None who come here want to be lost, but the forest demands its price." In that moment, Mara understood the endless cycler dance of memory and forgetting, identity and dissolution. The forest did not simply consume, it transformed, reshaping its victims into echoes, fragments of selves scattered through time and space. Her fingers tightened around the journal, searching for an anchor, a final tether to the person she had been. But the pages shifted beneath her touch, words blurring and reforming into unfamiliar shapes. The choice lay before her like a chasm, one path leading into the endless memory, the other into oblivion. The forest waited patiently, a silent sentinel to countless fates woven into its bark and leaves. Mara closed her eyes, the whispers swirling into a haunting lullaby. Somewhere deep inside, a flicker of hope remained fragile, tenacious as she stepped forward, crossing the threshold between self and the vast unknowable mind of the wild. And the forest waited. The shadows softened, the bioluminescent glow dimmed, and silence settled once more over the ancient grove. Somewhere, a new whisper drifted through the trees, a fresh fragment added to the endless archive, waiting for the next soul to wander beneath the whispering canopy. The price of return had been paid. Mara Ellison stood at the threshold of the ancient forest, the dense canopy towering above her like a cathedral of living stone. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and moss, a rich, organic perfume that filled her lungs with each breath. A cool breeze stirred leaves overhead, setting them to whisper in a language just beyond her understanding. She felt the pull-in invisible thread tugging her forward, deeper beneath the boughs where shadows tangled and the light grew thin. She tightened the straps of her pack and took a tentative step onto the carpet of pine needles. The forest greeted her not with silence, but with a subtle susurration, a chorus of murmurs caught in the wind. At first, she thought it was just the rustling of leaves, but the more she listened, the more she sensed something else, the faintest hints of voices, fragmented and elusive, like echoes of memories trapped within the very bark of the trees. Mara's sharp eyes scanned the shifting shadows between the trunks. For a moment, a shape moved, a flicker of motion, too swift to be a deer or bird. She blinked, and it was gone, leaving only the steady pulse of her own heartbeat. She shivered, though the air was not cold. "It's just your imagination," she whispered to herself, but the words felt hollow. Setting down her pack, Mara worked quickly to pitch her tent in a small clearing where the moonlight spilled through the canopy in silver shards. Her fingers trembled slightly as she pulled her journal from the pack, the leather cover worn smooth from years of use. She flipped to a blank page, dipping her pen into the ink and beginning to write. "First night back," she scrawled, "the forest feels different, or maybe it's me." Memories stirred unbidden images of previous visits to this very place. Faces half remembered, moments that should have been clear but were now distorted. She recalled laughter shared around campfires, the crunch of leaves beneath hurried footsteps, the scent of pine and rain. Yet something was wrong. The memories didn't line up. Names shifted, dates blurred, emotions twisted. It was as if the forest was rearranging the pieces of her past, molding them into something unrecognizable. A sudden rustle in the underbrush snapped Mara's attention back to the present. She squinted into the darkness, heart pounding. The whispering grew louder, a tapestry of sounds woven from the wind. The creak of ancient branches, and something else, something alive and watching. She closed her journal and extinguished her lantern, letting the darkness envelop her. The canopy above seemed to pulse with life, a breath held in anticipation. The trees were not just silent sentinels. They were sentient, aware, remembering. And Mara was their latest story, their newest secret. As sleep eluded her, Mara lay awake beneath the whispering canopy, the forest's voice a haunting lullaby that promised both revelation and oblivion. Somewhere deep inside, a question stirred. Why did the forest call her back? What truth lay hidden in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered? Her journey had begun, and the forest waited patiently, remembering her not as she was, but as it chose to see.